Hey everyone, and welcome to the channel. Today we're going to explore the life and times of Sir Keir Starmer, a guy who's made a real difference in Britain. Now I know what you're thinking. Another boring video about politics? No thanks. But stick around because Starmer's story isn't your typical political yawn fest. This is a man who went from being a human rights lawyer to leading the opposition, a man who stood up to Boris Johnson and won. Let's look at 7 reasons why we'll still be talking about Keir Starmer long after the political ads are gone. Before we get to Starmer the politician, let's talk about Starmer the lawyer. His journey in the legal world is nothing short of remarkable and inspiring. And don't worry, this isn't a boring law school lecture. This is a story about passion, dedication, and a relentless pursuit of justice. This is about a man who spent years fighting for the little guy, for the people who couldn't fight for themselves. Starmer's commitment to social justice was evident from the very beginning of his career. As Director of Public Prosecutions, Starmer didn't just sit around shuffling papers. He was a hands-on leader who took his responsibilities seriously. He saw a system that needed fixing, and he fixed it. His reforms were not just about changing policies, but about changing lives. He tackled everything from the terrible mistakes in the Stephen Lawrence murder investigation to making sure victims of violence were treated better. His work on the Stephen Lawrence case was particularly groundbreaking. For Starmer, it wasn't about getting famous, it was about justice, pure and simple. He believed in the power of the law to bring about real change. He took on some of the most powerful groups in the UK, making sure they were held responsible. His courage in the face of adversity was truly commendable. He wasn't afraid to make people mad, to tell the truth, even if it meant making enemies. His integrity and honesty set him apart in a field often criticized for its lack of both. And in a political world filled with, let's just say, shady characters, Starmer's commitment to justice was a breath of fresh air. His transition from law to politics was driven by the same principles that guided his legal career. This was a man who understood that the law wasn't just some idea, it was a tool to protect people and keep the powerful in check. His legacy as a lawyer continues to inspire many, showing that one person can indeed make a difference. Okay, let's talk about Starmer taking over the Labour Party. It was a time of great uncertainty and turmoil within the party. The leadership was in disarray, and the members were divided on key issues. Imagine this: 2019, the year the world went a little crazy. Political landscapes were shifting, and the UK was no exception. The streets were filled with protests and public events that seemed to capture the chaotic spirit of the times. Brexit was a mess. The Tories were causing chaos, and Labour, well, they weren't doing so great. The party was struggling to find its footing amidst the political upheaval, and the members were visibly concerned about the future. Then Keir Starmer arrives, with the tough job of fixing a party torn apart by disagreements and losing elections. He knew that the task ahead was monumental, but he was determined to bring about change. And this wasn't just about making things look better on the surface. This was a total rebuild. Starmer and his team had to go back to the drawing board, rethinking strategies and policies from the ground up. Starmer knew that to win back the people's trust, Labour needed a complete change. It wasn't enough to just tweak a few things here and there. The party needed a new direction, one that resonated with the public. He got rid of the arguing and focused on working together and, get this, being competent. The emphasis was on unity and efficiency, qualities that had been sorely lacking. Starmer knew that to win elections, you had to do more than just complain about the other guys, you had to offer a better plan. He presented a clear and actionable strategy that aimed to address the issues that mattered most to voters. He moved Labour back to the middle ground, getting rid of the ideas that had turned off so many voters. This was a calculated move to make the party more appealing to a broader audience. This wasn't about abandoning Labour's values, it was about remembering that those values don't matter if the party isn't in power. Starmer's approach was pragmatic, focusing on what needed to be done to win elections. Starmer's message was simple: Labour is back, and this time, they're serious. With a renewed sense of purpose and direction, the party aimed to regain the trust and support of the electorate. Now it's 2024. The Tories, after more than 10 years in power, had done the impossible. They'd made themselves even less popular. The UK, tired of tough times, Brexit problems, and feeling like the country was run by a bunch of kids, wanted change. And there was Keir Starmer, calm, cool, and offering a better future. The election wasn't even close. Labour won big, finally ending the Tory mess. Now I know what you're thinking. John, this sounds like a fairy tale. And you'd be right, because this kind of win is super rare in British politics. But here's the thing. Starmer's victory wasn't luck, it was hard work, planning, and a real connection with voters. He knew people were tired of the same old political tricks, the empty promises, the lies. Starmer offered something different: honesty, integrity, and a plan that didn't involve destroying the country. Okay, let's talk about the House of Lords. This institution has been a cornerstone of British politics for centuries, a symbol of tradition and continuity. But is it still relevant today? That group of unelected, powerful people who have somehow stayed in power for centuries. They wield significant influence without ever having to face the electorate. They're like that weird relative everyone pretends isn't there at family parties. You know they're there, but you just don't talk about them. Starmer wasn't going to ignore them. He saw the House of Lords as an outdated institution that needed reform. He decided to tear the whole thing down. Not literally, of course, but he aimed to dismantle its power and influence. He said it was wrong, and honestly, who can disagree? In a modern democracy, should power really be inherited or appointed without public consent? The idea that a bunch of rich people and political friends should have a say in running a modern country is crazy. It goes against the very principles of democracy. But getting rid of something that old wasn't easy. The House of Lords is deeply entrenched in the British political system. People shouted about tradition, and we've always done it this way. They argued that the House of Lords was a safeguard for the country. But Starmer, always practical, knew that sometimes tradition just means refusing to change. He believed that clinging to outdated practices was holding the country back. So he suggested a big change, replacing the House of Lords with an elected group representing different parts of the UK. This would ensure that all regions had a voice. This wasn't just about getting rid of something old, it was about making a fairer system. A system where power is earned, not given. And even though it was a long and difficult process, Starmer never gave up on getting rid of the House of Lords. He faced numerous challenges but remained steadfast. He knew that real democracy means power belongs to the people, not to those who are born into it. In the end, his efforts were about ensuring that every citizen's voice mattered. Let's talk about something more interesting than changing the government climate change. Don't worry, this isn't a lecture about melting ice. This is about Starmer's promise to tackle one of the biggest problems we face, and actually doing something about it. Unlike some politicians who just talk about the environment while supporting oil companies, Starmer actually did what he said. He promised to get rid of fossil fuels from the UK's electricity by 2030, a big goal, but based on the fact that we're running out of time. This wasn't just about setting goals, it was about creating a cleaner, greener future. Starmer knew that fighting climate change wasn't just good for the planet, it was good for the economy too. He invested in renewable energy, creating jobs and showing that helping the planet and helping people aren't opposites. Under Starmer, the UK became a world leader in fighting climate change, proving you can be a responsible country and a successful one. Let's talk about something that should be normal in any good society, but sadly isn't equality. I'm not just talking about equality on paper, I'm talking about real equality, where everyone, no matter their race, religion, gender, or who they love, has the same opportunities and rights. Starmer knew that real equality wasn't just about removing obstacles, it was about creating a society where those obstacles never existed. He supported the Black Lives Matter movement, understanding that racism isn't just an American problem, it's a global one. He promised a law about racial equality, because any government that doesn't see fighting racism as important is failing its people. But Starmer's commitment to equality didn't stop there. He promised to better protect LGBTQ+ people from hate crimes, because everyone deserves to feel safe. He wanted to ban conversion therapy, because the idea that someone's sexuality or gender needs to be cured is not just old-fashioned, it's cruel. Let's talk about something politicians often use to scare people: crime. I'm not talking about the scary stories politicians tell. I'm talking about real solutions to stop crime and make everyone safer. Starmer, with his experience in criminal justice, knew that the answer to crime wasn't more prisons, it was fewer victims. He promised to cut violence against women and girls, serious violent crime, and knife crime in half, not by locking people up and throwing away the key, but by fixing the problems that cause crime. He wanted people to trust the justice system, because a system that seems unfair will fail. He put special domestic violence workers in police stations, because sometimes having someone who understands what you're going through can save your life. Starmer's approach to crime wasn't about being tough. It was about being smart. It was about understanding that everyone deserves a second chance, but also that keeping people safe is the most important thing. So, there you have it. 7 reasons why we'll remember Keir Starmer. He was a leader who used his mind and his heart, a man who knew that real leadership isn't about having power, it's about using power to help people. He showed that you can have strong beliefs and still work with others. In a political world often filled with negativity and dishonesty, Keir Starmer offered something different: hope. He reminded us that politics can be a force for good, a way to build a fairer, better world for everyone.